Welcome to Jersey Reads the Classics, an audiobook podcast delving into the finest works of our literary masters. Unfortunately, it's read by this woman.
What the hell? Who cares? Let's go on an adventure.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Jersey Reads the Classics with me, your host, Rosie D. Candia. So you know where we're going right to, my friends. Peter Pan by J.M. Barrie. And let's move on to the next chapter. It's chapter 7, The Home Under the Ground. One of the first things Peter did next day was to measure Wendy and John and Michael for hollow trees. Hook, you remember, had sneered at the boys for thinking they needed a tree apiece, but this was ignorance, for unless your tree fitted you, it was difficult to go up and down, and no two of the boys were quite the same size. Oh, so they go up and down in the tree. I wonder how this is going to happen, okay? I mean, talk about going off the grid and living like, totally in the wilderness. I guess, a tree is very healing for you. I love hugging trees. I am a tree hugger. I'm not going to lie. Once you fitted, you drew your breath at the top, and down you went at exactly the right speed, while to ascend you drew in and let out alternately, and so wriggled up. That seems like a lot of friggin' work. Oh my God. Of course, when you have mastered the action, you were able to do these things without thinking of them, and nothing can be more graceful. So you have to, inhale to get down, or exhale to get down, and wiggle up. It's very confusing, but I guess such is the life of people that live in the trees. But you simply must fit, and Peter measures you for your tree as carefully as for a suit of clothes. The only difference being that the clothes are made to fit you, while you have to be made to fit the tree. Usually, it is done quite easily, as by your wearing too many garments or too few. But if you are bumpy in awkward places, or the only available tree is an odd shape, Peter does some things to you, and after that, you fit. Well, maybe we need Peter to work in the wedding industry. If you got some things that you're not fitting in your dress when it comes time for the second fitting, and then Peter can do some things to make you fit in that dress you bought a year ago. Peter's a tailor. Who would have thought it? Who would have thunk it? Once you fit, great care must be taken to go on fitting. And this, as Wendy was to discover to her delight, keeps a whole family in perfect condition. Wendy and Michael fitted their trees at the first try, but John had to be altered a little. After a few days' practice, they could go up and down as gaily as buckets in a well, and how ardently they grew to love their home under the ground, especially Wendy. It consisted of one large room, as all houses should do, with a floor in which you could dig if you wanted to go fishing. That's a brilliant idea. And in this floor grew stout mushrooms of a charming color, which were used as stools. These kids are ingenious. Let's not forget, they are ingenious. A nether tree tried hard to grow in the center of the room, but every morning they sawed the trunk through, level with the floor. By tea time, it was always about 2 feet high. And then they put a door on top of it, the whole thus becoming a table. As soon as they cleared away, they sawed off the trunk again, and thus there was more room to play. And who doesn't have enough room to play? You gotta have enough room to play. There was an enormous fireplace, which was in almost any part of the room where you cared to light it. And across this, Wendy stretched strings made of fiber from which she suspended her washing. Of course, Wendy's doing her motherly duties. Washing, cooking, taking care of everybody. Oh, poor Wendy. This is child labor. It's terrible. Wendy needs a lawyer. That's all I'm going to say. She needs a lawyer. That's all I'm saying. The bed was tilted against the wall by day and let down at 6:30, when it filled nearly half the room, and all the boys slept in it except Michael, lying like sardines in a tin. There was a strict rule against turning round until one gave the signal, when all turned at once. Michael should have used it also, but Wendy would have a baby, and he was the littlest, and you know what women are, and the short and long of it is that he was hung up in a basket. Okay, first of all, you know what women are. Yeah, we're doing your laundry, we're cooking, we're cleaning, we're doing everything else for you schmucks. But that bed that comes against the wall, that's like those Murphy beds. They fall off the wall and shit. In the old days, a small apartment would have the bed up here on the wall, and then you would pull it down at night, and then in the morning you put it back up. So these kids are kind of like Marie Kondo. If it doesn't bring you joy, get rid of it. They're living with the basics, and they're very happy. What does that teach us? It was rough and simple, and not unlike what baby bears would have made of an underground house in the same circumstances. But there was one recess in the wall, no larger than a bird cage, which was the private apartment of Tinkerbell. It could be shut off from the rest of the house by a tiny curtain, which Tink, who was most fastidious, always kept drawn when dressing or undressing. No woman, however large, could have had a more exquisite boudoir and bedchamber combined. Ha ha ha, I mean, Tinkerbell is quite the woman. She might be this big, but she's all woman with her embonpoint. I can't get rid of the embonpoint. Remember that? It's something I'll never forget. Okay. The couch, as she always called it, was a genuine Queen Mab with club legs, and she varied the bedspreads according to what fruit blossom was in season. Her mirror was a Puss in Boots, of which there are now only 3, unchipped, known to fairy dealers. The washstand was pie crust and reversible. The chest of drawers, an authentic Charming the Sixth, and the carpet and rugs, the best, the early period of Marjorie and Robin. There was a chandelier from Tiddlywinks for the look of the thing, but of course she lit the residence herself. Tink was very contemptuous of the rest of the house, as indeed was perhaps inevitable, and her chamber, though beautiful, looked rather conceited, having the appearance of a nose permanently turned up. So Tinkerbell is all about pomp and circumstance. I mean, this bitch got it going on. She got a birdcage, and she's got all this fine furniture, and she just be living the life. I mean, Tinkerbell is quite the little, we know that she's persnickety, and we know that she's not always the nicest, but look how she's living. She's living large. So you can have a large state of mind and still be a small person. So that's what that tells me. Dream big, people. Doesn't make a difference where you're starting from, okay? Just always dream big. I suppose it was all especially entrancing to Wendy, because those rampageous boys of hers gave us so much to do. Really, there were whole weeks when, except perhaps with the stocking in the evening, she was never above the ground. Aw, you see, now here we're going to find out what Wendy's doing. The cooking, I can tell you, kept her nose to the pot, and even if there was nothing in it, even if there was no pot, she had to keep watching that it came a boil just the same. Please. You never exactly knew whether there would be a real meal or just a make-believe. It all depended upon Peter's whim. He could eat, really eat, if it was part of a game. But he could not stodge just to feel stodgy, which is what most children like better than anything else. The next best thing being to talk about it. Make-believe was so real to him that during a meal of it, you could see him getting rounder. Of course, it was trying, but you simply had to follow his lead, and if you could prove to him that you were getting loose for your tree, he let you stodge. Oh my God, he's like a dictator. I understand he's their captain and their lead guy, and I know the book is all about him, but my God, he's a freaking Stalin here. He doesn't know if you're getting fat and stodgy, you're not gonna eat, so you can fit in your treat. And then Wendy, that poor schnook, she don't even know that she's just watching, you know when they say a watch pot never boils? She's watching a pot that has nothing. She ain't even watching a pot. Wendy, girl, come on now. You need a little bit of Alice's, fight back. Fight back, bitch. Wendy's favorite time for sewing and darning was after they had all gone to bed. Of course, another motherly thing or another woman thing, that the feminine thing to do. Then, as she expressed it, she had a breathing time for herself. Maybe it's a meditation time, that's what I'll say. And she occupied it in making new things for them and putting double pieces on the knees, for they were almost frightfully hard on their knees. When she sat down to a basket full of their stockings, every heel with a hole in it, she would fling up her arms and exclaim, "Oh dear, I'm sure I sometimes think spinsters are to be envied." Girl, you ain't even married. He didn't even put a ring on it. You are a spinster. You just be taking care of all these little bratty kids and Peter Pan, and they ain't no ring, you know what I'm saying? He really should have put a ring on that shit. And poor Wendy, she's only 12 years old and she's wishing she was a spinster. Ugh. Her face beamed when she exclaimed this. See? She knows that this was not what she wanted to do. You remember about her pet wolf? Well, it very soon discovered that she had come to the island, and it found her out, and they just ran into each other's arms. After that, it followed her about everywhere. Oh, great. So Wendy has a pet wolf. It's kind of like the Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've ever seen Game of Thrones, but honestly, watch Game of Thrones. They all have like a pet dire wolf. So at least Wendy's got a pet. Oy vey. As time wore on, did she think much about the beloved parents she had left behind her? This is a difficult question, because it is quite impossible to say how time does wear on in the Neverland, where it is calculated by moons and suns, and there are ever so many more of them on the mainland. But I'm afraid that Wendy did not really worry about her father and mother. She was absolutely confident that they would always keep the window open for her to fly back by, and this gave her complete ease of mind. What did disturb her at times was that John remembered his parents vaguely only, as people he had once known, while Michael was quite willing to believe that she really was his mother. Oh, shit's getting real. These kids are forgetting everything. That's the thing, when kids are small, they don't see their parents for a while, they cling on to who's ever taking care of them. It's like pets, right? The same thing. Where's the loyalty? Where's the loyalty? These things scared her a little, and nobly anxious to do her duty, she tried to fix the old life in their minds by setting them examination papers on it, as like as possible to the ones she used to do at school. The other boys thought this awfully interesting and insisted on joining, and they made slates for themselves and sat round the table, writing and thinking hard about the questions she had written on another slate and passed round. They were the most ordinary questions. What was the color of mother's eyes? Which was taller, father or mother? Was mother blonde or brunette? Answer all three questions if possible. A. Write an essay of not less than 40 words on how I spent my last holidays or the characters of father and mother compared. Only one of these to be attempted. Or 1. Describe mother's laugh. 2. Describe father's laugh. 3. Describe mother's party dress. 4. Describe the kennel and its inmate. What kind of exam is this? I mean, first of all, these kids are really young, and I don't even know if Michael can write. And she's asking him these ridiculous questions, and she's wanting a 40-word essay? That's a lot when you're like 5 years old. I mean, I don't really know the exact ages, but Wendy's a hard teacher. You know what? She'd be good in the school system. Good for you, Wendy. They were just everyday questions like these, and when you could not answer them, you were told to make a cross, and it was really dreadful what a number of crosses even John made. Of course, the only boy who replied to every question was slightly, of course, and no one could have been more hopeful of coming out first, but his answers were perfectly ridiculous, and he really came out last. A melancholy thing. Peter did not compete. For one thing, he despised all mothers except Wendy, and for another, he was the only boy on the island who could neither write nor spell, not the smallest word. He was above all that sort of thing. Oh, look at that. Peter doesn't have any education like the rest of them, but he can't read or write or spell whatever, and the rest of them can. So I guess, oh, that's right, because he's been on the Neverland since he was a baby, so no one's taught him anything. But he's still a smart motherfucker, because he's gotten all these people to follow him, and he's like the leader of everybody, and he's got Wendy there doing his washing and doing everything else. So Peter ain't that dumb, is he? He's street smart. That's what we call street smart, or Neverland smart. By the way, the questions were all written in the past tense. What was the color of mother's eyes? And so on. Wendy, you see, had been forgetting to... Oh, poor Wendy. You know, I feel so badly for her. She's like got all this burden. She's taking care of all these kiddies and then herself, and she's 12 years old. She's a child herself. These are like child bride syndromes, you know what I mean? Like years ago, like in the days when a woman became a woman and she got her cycle, suddenly it was like they had to get the dowry together and find her an older husband and get married, because now she's going to be taking care of your house, taking care of your farm, and popping out kids. You know what I mean? And this is just reinforcing that. Thank God for women's lib. Adventures, of course, as we shall see, were of daily occurrence. But about this time, Peter invented, with Wendy's help, a new game that fascinated him enormously, until he suddenly had no more interest in it, which, as you have been told, was what always happened with his games. We remember that he's got ADD. He can't pay attention to anything. He doesn't even remember people's names. So Peter is like here today, gone tomorrow, kind of like his memory and his interests. Okay, I know a lot of people like that. It consisted in pretending not to have adventures, in doing the sort of thing John and Michael had been doing all their lives, sitting on stools, flinging balls in the air, pushing each other, going out for walks, and coming back without having killed so much as a grizzly. To see Peter doing nothing on a stool was a great sight. He could not help looking solemn at such times. To sit still seemed to him such a comic thing to do. He boasted that he had gone walking for the good of his health. For several sons, these were the most novel of all adventures to him, and John and Michael had to pretend to be delighted also. Otherwise, he would have treated them severely. God, this Peter, he's a dictator. And the fact is, you know what's so interesting? Is that they're so used to having adventures, Peter and the Lost Boys, that doing nothing at all, right, is interesting to them. And it's kind of like us. We're so busy in the busyness of life, and then when it comes down to us having to do absolutely nothing at all because we don't want to get quiet and go within, we suddenly get antsy. And I will tell you, Becoming still is the most healthy thing for your mind, body, and spirit. It does a lot of good, and you do a lot of healing that way. In my own personal experience, I can say that. I'm not going to, I shit you not, okay? He often went out alone, and when he came back, you were never absolutely certain whether he had had an adventure or not. I wonder what Peter's doing all day. Was he hanging out with the mermaids? Okay, you know what I'm saying? I think there's some hanky-panky. I don't care if he's a kid. He's probably, I don't know, he's prepubescent. That's all I'm saying. He might have forgotten it so completely that he said nothing about it. And then when you went out, you found the body. Oh my God, who is he killing? What is going on with this kid? And on the other hand, he might say a great deal about it, and yet you could not find the body. The body of whom, people? Are we talking about pirates? Who is he killing? Hello? A grizzly? They're not saying anything. It's not even like the body of a beast. I'm confused. Sometimes he came home with his head bandaged, and then Wendy cooed over him and bathed it in lukewarm water while he told a dazzling tale. But she was never quite sure, you know. There were, however, many adventures which she knew to be true because she was in them herself. And there was still more than that were at least partly true, for the other boys were in them and said they were wholly true. To describe them all would require a book as large as an Latin-English dictionary. And the most we can do is to give one as a specimen of an average hour on the island. The difficulty is which one to choose. Should we take the brush with the Redskins at Slightly Gulch? It was a sanguinary affair, and especially interesting as showing one of Peter's peculiarities, which was that in the middle of a fight, he would suddenly change sides. At the Gulch, when victory was still in the balance, sometimes leaning this way and sometimes that, he called out, "I'm Redskin today. What are you, Toodles?" And Toodles answered, "Redskin. What are you, Nibs?" And Nibs said, "Redskin. What are you, Twin?" And so on. And they were all Redskins. And of course, this would have ended the fight, had not the real Redskins, fascinated by Peter's methods, agreed to be Lost Boys for that once. And so at it, they all went again, more fiercely than ever. My God, he even switches sides. He's a trainer. My God, everything revolves around Peter. I get the book's called around him, but like no one even questions him. Good God, this is a dictatorship. I don't care what anybody says. The extraordinary upshot of this adventure was, but we have not decided yet that this is the adventure we are to narrate. Perhaps a better one would be the night attack by the Redskins on the house under the ground, when several of them stuck in the hollow trees and had to be pulled out like corks. Or we might tell how Peter saved Tiger Lily's life in the Mermaid's Lagoon and so made her his ally. Or we could tell of that cake the pirates cooked so that the boys might eat it and perish, and how they placed it in one cunning spot after another. But always Wendy snatched it from the hands of the children, so that in time it lost its succulence and became as hard as a stone, and was used as a missile, and Hook fell over it in the dark. Or suppose we tell of the birds that were Peter's friends, particularly of the Never bird that built Well, suppose we tell of the birds that were Peter's friends, particularly of the Never bird that built in a tree overhanging the lagoon, and how the nest fell into the water, and still the bird sat on her eggs, and Peter gave orders that she was not to be disturbed. This is a pretty story, and in the end shows how grateful a bird can be. But if we tell it, we must also tell the whole adventure of the lagoon, which would, of course, be telling two adventures rather than just one. A shorter adventure, and quite as exciting, was Tinkerbell's attempt, with the help of some street fairies, to have the sleeping Wendy conveyed on a great floating leaf to the mainland. Fortunately, the leaf gave way, and Wendy woke thinking it was bath time and swam back. Or again, we might choose Peter's defiance of the lions when he drew a circle round them on the ground with an arrow and dared them to cross it, and though he waited for hours with the other boys and Wendy looking on breathlessly from trees, not one of them dared to accept his challenge. Which of the adventures shall we choose? The best way will be to toss for it. That's fair. I have tossed, and the lagoon has won. This almost makes one wish that the gulch or the cake or Tink's leaf had won. Of course, I could do it again and make it best out of three. However, perhaps fairest to stick to the lagoon. Wow. Okay. I'm excited for the Mermaid's Lagoon. I'm excited for this whole tale. I just want to say I really feel terribly for poor Wendy girl. Wendy girl is just like stuck in the house doing all the shit, and I feel like even though she's enjoying the little things, and that's what leads me now into the woo-woo, the little things. As you can see, these kids have nothing. There's nothing going on, but they're make-believing and they're making fun. And do you remember a time when you were a kid and you used to make fun and like make-believe, right? And have fun because you thought when you were playing pirates or cowboys and you were playing like the dastardly evil guy or whatever you were doing, you really believed it. So it was so much fun, and you didn't have any of the accoutrements, you didn't have any video games, you were just doing whatever was in the flow. And you could have video games, and that's fine too, because in my day it was like Atari, then Nintendo. That's how old school. Remember there was ping pong or something, pong? Anyway, the point is this. What I love about it is the simplicity of this chapter, the simplicity of life. And the fact is they're having such a simple life. And because their life is so simple, they're finding the joys in being together, communing with each other, and just enjoying life and just being in the present. And I think, as I said this before in Alice in Wonderland, and just in general, life is really what you make of it. Sometimes, we're not handed everything we want in life. Things don't go as we plan. And also, we may not have all the things that we think we need, because a lot of us think we need a lot more than we're given. And if you can make the most of what you're given and totally like toodles, be totally appreciative of what you have and find the joy in it and really be thankful for it. And cherish the things that are the little things, like the people in your life, the relationships, the things that you do have that bring you joy, which are the small things. You will always find happiness. I'm going to challenge you to think of a time in your life, and it could be when you were a child, or it even could be recently when you had to go back down to basics. Because, my friends, thing is, you know how they say more money, more problems? Think about it. Every time you get a raise or you get a job that's more money, suddenly you get the bigger house, you get the nicer car, then you get more friggin' bills, and then you gotta live up to the Joneses, or you think you gotta live up to the Joneses, and then you keep pushing yourself and thinking that all those things are what brings you joy, and then you actually lose touch with what exactly was the joy that you used to get when you were younger or before you had all this money. So many people that have made a lot of money find they kind of feel like, I remember when I didn't have money and I was actually happier. Now, that's not to say you're not supposed to have goals and make money. Okay, I'm not saying that, because money's energy, it's currency, and we do need it to live. However, it's how much do we need? The thing is this, people that have a life that is just the basics, their clothing, a roof over their head, food, and good family and friends, a support system, they're probably better off than a lot of the millionaires, billionaires that sit in their big mansions. And we think all these billionaires and millionaires are so happy, my friend. You know what? They're worried about how they're going to keep their money, how much money they're losing each day, and how they're just going to dominate whatever they need to dominate. Because for them, and I'm not saying this is all billionaires, because there are a lot of billionaires and millionaires that do philanthropic things. So I think that's important too. So I don't want anybody out there feeling guilty for having tons of money. What I want to encourage you, if you're journaling, great. If not, no, who cares? It's all right. Think back of the time when you had the simple and the basics time. Like, think of your childhood. Think about a moment in time, even when that Christmas morning, how sometimes you get lots of presents. Maybe you didn't. You got one freaking present, but it was the present you loved and you played with it. Or at the end of the day, it was just the fact that the memories of your Christmas mornings or Christmas Eves were because you were with your family, and that you just had great times being with them, and it wasn't even about the presents. There's that movie Citizen Kane. It is a classic, written and directed and starring Orson Welles. I think it was his first major flick. I think, don't quote me. And he's a billionaire. It's based on William Randolph Hearst, but it's completely fictional, but not. He's this guy who becomes a multi-billionaire, right? Has it all, and at the end of the movie, in the beginning he says something, Rosebud, and you're like, who's Rosebud? And they go through his life, and at the end of the movie, his Rosebud was his sled from childhood. That was the last words on his lips when he died in bed. Rosebud, Rosebud. And that's what I'm going to encourage you to do. Think of the simple things. Think of simpler times. Think of what brought you joy. And if it's the little things, my friend, tap into that energy. Tap into it and find today, right here, right now, something that brings you joy. Whether it's reading a book, whether it's listening to music from when you were growing up, whether it's watching cartoons when you were a child, watching a movie that brings back so many memories of your teenage years. It doesn't make a difference. Think of the times that you had the most fun, and it wasn't all about pomp and circumstance and all that extra bullshit that is not really necessary. And hold on to that feeling, and perhaps think about what you can add in your life each day to give you that little bit of joy, because it's there. It's there. And we have memories for a reason. They're beautiful, and we get older, so we get nostalgic. And being nostalgic is fine. It's just not, dwelling on like, oh, I had this. It's more of looking at something fondly and remembering that feeling and just finding that place and finding that feeling again and staying in that vibration and knowing that each and every day that you get up, you have the choice to relish the little things in life, whether it's seeing your partner, your children, or going to a job you love, or having a tea with one of your good friends, or just sitting on the freaking couch and watching Brady Bunch reruns. Hello. I'm just saying. Anyway, I'm going to encourage you to do these things. I hope you enjoyed this chapter. I hope you're enjoying this book, because I'm totally enjoying it. And I hope I've left you with a little laughter, a little inspiration, and hope, some feel-good moments. So, wishing you a blessed day, knowing that you are fantabulous, magical. Create the magic. I also like to tell people, you can find magic in your own life, because magic is real if you believe. Remember, seeing isn't believing. They always say seeing is believing. Believing is seeing. See with your mind's eye the things that you want to create in your life. And it doesn't have to be big and huge. It's just even joy, peace, love, health, happiness, the basic things that actually make us better people. So with that, I keep blabbering. I'm going to stop blabbering. I'm wishing you well. Stay blessed, never stressed, and I'll see you soon. Bye. I wanted to go back into that song. Da 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 da. Little things mean a lot. Throw me a kiss from across the room. That's all I know. It's a very old song.